We have all heard the saying that a dog is a man's best friend. These animals tend to make excellent companions because they have a reputation for being calm, friendly, and helping to stay in shape. Therefore, dogs can be incredible additions to your life if you have the time and desire to care for these animals and give them the love they deserve. Owners who treat their dogs well are usually rewarded by them, usually in the form of cuddles and tons of love. However, this family's dog rewarded them in another way after giving them quite a scare. What would Bobby reveal in the middle of the night? Would he be able to save the child Peter in time? Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. Bobby is a young cockapoo who lives with his human family in Sydney, Australia. This family consists of George, Kyla, and their little son Peter. Bobby and Peter are both 2 years old and have grown up together. The parents decided to have Bobby when their son was a baby because they wanted Peter to have a companion. The idea worked excellently, as the two are incredibly close. They do almost everything together, especially going for walks with Peter in the stroller. The family is very happy with their life with Bobby, and the same can be said for Bobby. However, this was not always the case for the little cockapoo, and the chances of him ending up with a loving and pleasant family were very slim. Bobby was born to a mother who was owned by a ruthless dog breeder with dollar signs for eyes. To this breeder, Bobby was just another puppy born to make money. He didn't care about the puppy's well-being, simply craving more money. Along with his brothers and sisters, Bobby was sold to the highest bidder, as was the case with all the dogs the breeder had. Generally, not all of these bidders were looking to provide the dogs with a good home. These dogs had no security for their future. In some cases, these dogs could be sold to a loving and caring owner who would treat them properly. Otherwise, they could be sold to an illegal zoo and used as food for other animals. Bobby was considered a product, so he was treated poorly. He was only given enough food to survive and was forced to live in a very small cage. He wasn't even allowed out of his cage to walk and had a very rough first few weeks. However, Bobby was very lucky because his breeder was arrested just a couple of days after his birth. Sydney police discovered and immediately shut down the breeder's operation. After his arrest, all of his dogs were put up for adoption. This is where George and Kyla come into the picture. They had welcomed Peter into the world just a few weeks earlier, when they read that it was great for a baby to be around a puppy from a young age. Since George and Kyla had wanted a dog for themselves for a long time, they took this opportunity to get one. It seemed like the perfect moment, and they immediately fell in love with Bobby during their visit to the adoption office. The family had to fill out endless paperwork. Additionally, animal shelter employees had to inspect the family's home to ensure it was suitable for raising a dog. They also talked about the responsibilities of being a dog owner. It might seem like this procedure was a bit over the top for adopting Bobby, but the employees at the animal shelter cared about Bobby and wanted to make sure he went to the right home. Everyone had fallen in love with the little dog after he arrived at the shelter. Bobby was incredibly shy on his arrival there, probably because he hadn't received enough love and affection. So it took him a while to get used to being surrounded by attentive employees, but he soon loved every minute of this attention. The puppy was so loved by the animal shelter staff that some members wanted to adopt him as well, but there was always something that prevented it. However, Bobby easily found a family who wanted to take him home. The animal shelter staff believed George and Kyla would be responsible owners and signed the paperwork to ensure the adoption would go through. It seemed like Bobby had found his forever family, and it was exactly what he needed. Kyla and George didn't have the biggest house, but Bobby was pretty small, so he had all the space he could need. His energy was such that he flew around the house, knocking over objects as he did so. Bobby had already broken 2 vases before Kyla and George decided they had to find a way to stop this from happening. Luckily, the parents quickly discovered that there was one thing that seemed to calm the dog. Before we continue with this story, like this video to help it reach 15k likes, share and subscribe to our channel. The parents soon discovered that their son, Peter, could help calm Bobby down. Peter was only a few weeks old, and at that time, Bobby had no idea how to react to the strange baby. However, he did not stop being curious about the small, unknown creature. Bobby soon worked up the courage to approach the baby. Once this happened, there was no turning back. The dog stayed beside the baby for hours. He would lie next to him and react to every movement, but he never barked or did anything to bother Peter. While George and Kyla fell in love with Bobby, Bobby fell in love with Peter. The adorable couple seemed to have created an incredibly strong bond, perhaps because they were both the same age when they met. Bobby and Peter were a strong couple who did everything together. They went for a walk together to the park with Peter in a stroller. They grew up together until Peter was able to walk next to Bobby when they went to the park. At home, the couple continued to do everything together. There was nothing they wouldn't do with each other. Bobby was always playing with Peter, and they seemed to have a lot of fun together, which only made George and Kyla happy. One night, George and Kyla were woken up by Bobby's barking. At the time, Peter and Bobby were 3 years old. The couple wasn't sure what was going on, but they could hear Bobby barking loudly in the middle of the night, which was unusual for him. After a while, George and Kyla recognized that the barking was accompanied by faint screams, which they were able to recognize immediately. It was their son. Without a moment's hesitation, they jumped out of bed and rushed to see what was happening. Many scenarios began to run through the parents' minds. Was Bobby trying to get their attention because Peter was having problems? Did Bobby hurt Peter? They didn't think the latter was possible, but they still had to find out what was happening. When the parents opened the door, they found something they didn't expect. Bobby and Peter were standing, and it looked like the two of them were in some sort of standoff. Peter started crying even harder now that his parents were in the room. It seemed like Bobby was trying to get Peter away from the table next to the couch. He was even blocking it to prevent the young man from going in that direction. With every step the boy took, Bobby barked even louder. Kyla and George at first didn't know why Bobby was acting like this, especially at this time of night. However, they quickly understood when they saw what was on the table. Peter's stuffed elephant was still on the table from the day before. The stuffed elephant was Peter's favorite toy, and he always went to bed with it. It seemed like he had woken up during the night and realized that he didn't have his favorite toy, but this didn't explain Bobby's strange behavior. George took a few steps to try to get the toy, but Bobby acted the same way and started barking. He wouldn't let George go near the table to get the toy. Something didn't add up. This was completely out of character for Bobby. This was completely unexpected and made George feel confused and a little upset, as he had just woken up in the middle of the night. The father became angry and scolded the dog as he walked to the table, but this did not stop Bobby. At that point, George decided that was enough and picked up Bobby. Although the dog tried to resist, he was nothing more than a small cockapoo and he couldn't do much. However, he continued barking at the top of his lungs while he was in George's arms. Now that Bobby was out of the way, Kyla could go to the table and get the stuffed animal for Peter. However, when she was about to pick it up, she realized that there was something under the toy. It was something she didn't expect to see. A huge hunting spider appeared at the bottom of the plush, and Kyla quickly moved away from the table. Although these creatures are incredibly common to see in Australia, they had never encountered one this large, and it was alarming. Kyla instantly started jumping and screaming when she saw the creature. This didn't help the situation, as Bobby only started barking louder and Peter started crying again. Although Kyla wasn't usually afraid of spiders, this one had come out of nowhere. When George saw the spider, he quickly handed Bobby, who was still barking, to Kyla and ran to the kitchen. He returned with a frying pan that he was going to use to catch the spider. He knew that he had to act quickly before the spider moved away. Once he returned to the living room, he could see the spider walking towards the edge of the table. George decided to slowly and carefully approach the table to place the frying pan on top of the spider and catch it. Once George had caught the spider, Bobby stopped barking and the parents simultaneously breathed a sigh of relief. Their hearts were still racing, but they could finally calm down now that the spider was trapped. They couldn't believe what had just happened. Even after everything that had happened, Peter still kept his eyes on his precious stuffed elephant. George walked over to the stuffed animal, picked it up and inspected it. He made sure there were no spider eggs before handing the toy to his son. George made sure the stuffed animal was safe and returned it to Peter. This allowed Peter to calm down, and the parents decided to take him back to bed, with Bobby following him. The parents were grateful that Bobby had been there to protect Peter. Have you ever found an unexpected creature in your home? Do you have a beloved pet who is very protective of you or a member of your family? Tell us about it in the comments, and remember to like, share, and ring that notification bell for more heartwarming stories like this. See you next time.